The National Desk, America's News, now.
Biden refuses calls to step away.
The fact that he can win is not a persuasive argument. The question is, what are the odds that he would win, and would we have a better chance with someone else?
What some of his donors are doing to change that decision. Cell phone hack. Millions of Americans' data put at risk. Why it took AT&T so long to alert the public. Then, toxic food available to children. Just how long did the federal government know the contaminated snacks for kids were on the shelves? This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. President Joe Biden in Detroit this evening, looking to boost his campaign as he faces hard questions about his candidacy. The president is hoping to secure a win in what's considered to be the blue wall states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. It is his fourth trip to Michigan, but this time it comes as more calls grow louder for him to step aside. A growing chorus of Democrats question whether Biden has the ability to beat former President Donald Trump and serve another 4 years in the White House. Biden sought to mitigate concerns during a solo news conference last night, but it's unclear that it was enough to unify a seemingly divided Democratic caucus. And new tonight, the New York Times reporting that Democratic donors are putting money on hold over objections to Biden's candidacy. Joining me now to discuss this and the latest polling out is national correspondent Kayla Gaskins. And Kayla, we're not talking about a small amount of money here. What do we know about what's reportedly being held?
Well, Amir, we know from the New York Times reporting that around $90 million of contribution pledges to a pro-Biden super PAC called Future Forward are now frozen and will remain frozen if the president does not step down from the top of the ticket. The super PAC has not commented publicly on the situation, and this shows some very big Democratic donors are very unhappy with Biden. The Times calling this a concrete example of the fallout from Biden's terrible debate performance last month. And this is Biden's main super PAC for the 2024 election. Future Forward already announced $250 million in TV and digital ad reservations, scheduled to start when the race ramps up after the DNC convention next month. One individual who donates to Future Forward did speak on the condition of anonymity, saying that they were approached by the super PAC multiple times after the debate, but that he and his friends are holding out.
And Kayla, a new poll out today, it shows that Trump and Biden are in a statistical tie despite that shaky debate for Biden. And yesterday we saw a similar result from an ABC poll. What are we to make of these new numbers? Because it wasn't so long ago that Biden was showing that he was losing ground after the debate.
Well, the poll out today is an NPR PBS News Marist poll, and it has Biden and Trump statistically tied. Now, the ABC News poll that you mentioned also has them tied, but Amir, those are just two polls. The news publication The Hill did analyze the results of 225 polls. Those combined still give Trump a 2.4% lead at the moment, and according to their analysis, Trump is now more likely to win in November. Real Clear Politics, which also looks at a broader polling trends, they did an average of polls as well, and they conclude that Trump's advantage more than doubled from 1.5% at the end of June to 3.3% now. But it's the battleground states that will likely decide this election. So when looking at 6 key states, the polls in 3 of those did move recently in Biden's favor, although Trump still has an advantage in 5 of those 6 states. Now, I know I just threw a lot of numbers out at you, and there's still a lot that can happen before November's election. Amira?
Yeah, but the decision ultimately rests with those voters. Live from Washington, D.C., Kayla Gaskins, thank you so much. And tonight, more information about a massive breach impacting nearly all AT&T and cell phone customers. The compromised data includes tens of millions of customers' phone numbers between May and October of 2022, though the contents of their calls or texts were not exposed. So that's the good news. The company says that its data was illegally downloaded on a third-party cloud platform. The mobile mobile giant says it has closed the access point, and so far we know at least one person has been arrested as the federal government investigates. The breach was discovered in April, but the FBI says AT&T delayed disclosing it publicly because of the potential national security and public safety risks. Thousands of people treated at 2 hospitals in Portland, Oregon may have been exposed to HIV and hepatitis B and C. Providence and Legacy Health are telling around 2,400 patients to get blood tests because of the actions of a physician who they say delivered intravenous anesthesia and employed, quote, unacceptable infection control practices. No illnesses have been reported as of yet, and we do know that physician has been removed. Right now, a search underway for 2 people who are missing after their tour helicopter crashed off the coast of Kauai in Hawaii. Police say one person was killed in the accident that was reported by hikers. The Coast Guard and local search and rescue crews are responding as the FAA and the NTSB investigate. Ghost guns, they're hard to trace, have no serial numbers, and you can assemble them with just a kit. For years, they were popular with cartels, but the demand for these firearms is changing. The National Desk's Jordan Elder is in San Antonio with more on the surprising places these firearms are now popping up.
Here's our vault right here. Here we go. So these are 2 examples of privately made firearms. This one is actually a machine gun.
This is a ghost gun, or as the ATF calls them, privately made firearms, even though they look a lot like regular weapons.
Well, one of the things that will be immediately apparent is there's no manufacturer or serial number on the lower part of the gun.
That's Robert Topper, the assistant special agent in charge of the ATF Houston division. He showed us around this vault in San Antonio, where weapons are documented before they're destroyed.
As PMFs or privately made firearms became more available, they were sought after. Because they don't come with serial numbers.
For a while, this is what cartels wanted. It was a way to get weapons that were harder to trace. Harder does not mean impossible, though.
Even though PMFs aren't traditionally traceable, they are trackable if they are used in shootings.
Every gun leaves a unique print on the shell casing it fires, including these ghost guns. That means you can still link crimes committed with the same weapons. But recently, cartel demand has slowed down.
The reliability of those guns is still not as good as your regular manufactured firearm, as your commercially manufactured firearms.
These days, you can buy kits with everything you need to build a customized but largely untraceable firearm. The ATF says, especially here in Texas, those purchases aren't usually nefarious.
Most of the people that make privately made firearms are just making them for personal use, just one firearm. They would do that, and they don't distribute them.
Where the issue arises, Topper says, is when people leave their guns inside cars. San Antonio police estimate more than 1,000 weapons have already been stolen from cars so far this year, though it's unclear how many of those were privately made.
Michael Waddell, the special agent in charge for the Houston division, says if those firearms end up in the wrong hands.
The investigation part of that is absolutely difficult. But that's where we pair up with our federal and state partners to develop those investigative leads.
There are things you can do to make yourself less of a target. Leaving your weapons at home instead of in your car, glove compartment gun safes, and park in safe, well-lit areas.
It doesn't matter if it's a commercially made firearm or a privately made firearm. We want gun owners to be responsible.
The regulation of these ghost guns could go before the Supreme Court later this year. They've agreed to weigh in on a rule that changes how manufacturers and sellers of these kits do their business.
And breaking news right now, this just in, the criminal involuntary manslaughter case against Alec Baldwin has been dismissed. This news coming in just moments ago to our newsroom. It comes after we just learned the trial was on hold this afternoon, and then one of the prosecutors resigned. Baldwin's lawyers argued that they did not receive an important piece of evidence from prosecutors in relation to the death of Rust cinematographer Helena Hutchins. The prosecutors had told the judge that the evidence was not, in fact, connected to the case and was not hidden from the defense, but it appears the judge did not agree. We're working to find out more information on that, and just as soon as that information comes in, we will bring it to you. Meantime, jury deliberations began this afternoon in the bribery trial of New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez. The trial has been going on for 2 months. The New Jersey Democrat and his wife are accused of doing favors for New Jersey businessmen and the Egyptian government in exchange for gold, cash, and even a Mercedes-Benz. The 70-year-old denies any wrongdoing. His wife, Nadine, will also stand trial in August. Coming up, the area is getting hit hardest by the dangerous heat. Plus, who's most at risk right now for flooding? And any day now, we expect to learn who former President Trump has chosen to be his running mate. A closer look at the narrowed down list of contenders. Plus, our team has been covering toxic metals in baby food for years. Now we know popular snacks are contaminated too. The historic record-breaking temperatures continue on the West Coast from California all the way to Colorado. Life-threatening excessive heat warnings remain. Las Vegas may hit its 7th day in a row of 115 degrees or more. Yesterday's high of 118 is now the second all-time high. This past Sunday hit 120. The previous record of 117 was set back in 1942. The dangerous temperatures are expected to move across the Central Plains, southeast and eastern U.S. late this weekend, lasting into the week. The NWS forecasts starting Monday an increasing threat of extreme heat will impact portions of the southeast and also the East Coast. And tonight, nearly 1 million Texas customers are still without power after being struck by Hurricane Beryl earlier in the week. CenterPoint Energy, that's the Texas utility responsible for most of the outages, they say they expect to have restored power to about 400,000 establishments, and they hope to recover another 250,000 by the end of the day on Sunday. But that would still leave roughly 400,000 who still don't have power a week after the storm. Meantime, firefighters continue to battle 71 wildfires across the country, burning close to 700,000 acres. At least 37 of them are not contained or under control on the western half of the continental U.S. 33 of them are in Alaska. This as San Francisco reported their first death from a fire in the 2024 season today. This year, almost 3 million acres have burned, 4 times more than what we saw at this same time last year. And we're also tracking an increased risk of excessive rainfall from the mid-Atlantic to the Northeast over the next couple of days, bringing flood alerts along the coast. The National Weather Service is warning heavily populated areas of flash flooding. In Vermont, officials say it will take several more days to get a full picture of the damage flooding caused by the remnants of Hurricane Beryl. Authorities have confirmed 2 people were killed by the floodwaters and more than 120 people were rescued. Beryl's remnants dumped more than 6 inches of rain in just a few hours. Officials say there have been roughly 250 reports of damage, but they assume there will be more. The Republican National Convention kicks off on Monday in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Former President Donald Trump is set to accept the party's nomination. The biggest headline is expected to come from Trump's pick for a vice presidential candidate. National correspondent Atrel Nashar shows us who's on his short list.
Republicans' high-stakes Veep stakes will soon have its winner.
We have some great people that we're looking at. We have, as they say, a deep bench.
All indications are this is the list he's choosing from. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, and Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who Trump just acknowledged publicly.
He's certainly one of the people that we're looking at.
Now, there is an obvious hurdle with the Trump-Rubio ticket because they're both Floridians. The Constitution's 12th Amendment states the president and vice president shall not be an inhabitant of the same state.
There are people that don't have that complication. Now, it's fairly easily fixed, but you have to do something with delegates, or there has to be a resignation, et cetera, et cetera.
I don't know who he's going to pick, but he'll pick somebody good, I'm sure of that.
Rubio, like Burgum and Scott, all at one point ran against Trump in a presidential primary, so they'd have to convince the public they're over moments like these.
You tell me about this guy. This is what we're going to have.
Here's the guy that inherited $200 million. If he hadn't inherited $200 million, you know where Donald Trump would be right now? Selling watches in Manhattan.
Did you ever do business with Donald Trump?
I don't think so.
Scott once told a voter about Trump, I don't think he can win. Even Vance, before running for Senate, was a big Trump critic.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
All have either walked back their criticism or say they changed their minds.
Donald Trump has been a very good president. He will be a very good president again.
Trump says he'll make his decision before the RNC begins and that it won't be impacted by whether President Biden remains the Democratic nominee, as some in his party call for him to exit the race. In Washington, I'm Atrel Nashar.
Atra, thank you. Wholesale prices rose higher than expected last month, a sign that some inflation pressures remain. Prices were up by 2.6% in today's Labor Department report. The Producer Price Index, which tracks inflation before it reaches consumers, rose 0.2% from May to June. Now, much of that was driven by service prices. By contrast, prices of goods, gas, and food dropped. But rising is the price of stamps. So you might want to head to the post office today or tomorrow to stock up, because the cost of a first-class forever stamp is going up this weekend on Sunday from 68 cents to 73 cents. It is the second stamp price hike this year, and it's part of the Postal Service's 10-year plan for financial stability. As for the dog parents out there, if you're planning to travel internationally with your furry friend, you'll have to meet a whole new set of requirements. Starting August 1st, 3 new CDC guidelines will go into effect. Dogs must be at least 6 months old, have a microchip, and have CDC dog import forms. 2 previous requirements, by the way, will also remain in effect: proof of rabies documentation and a visibly healthy appearance. Some say the new guidelines could cause problems for dog breeders who do business across the border and may pose a financial challenge for dog owners living in northern border states whose closest vet care is in Canada. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
The drugs coming into the U.S. from Mexico are one thing.
Some of them look like they're under the age of 18.
But Grand County Sheriff Jamison Wiggins says it's carloads of trafficking victims who are also being smuggled through the county. This video from 2021 is a memorable stop for Sheriff Wiggins.
Plus driver 14.
12 people crammed inside of one vehicle. Wiggins was a deputy at the time.
I remember going home to my wife that night. The one girl, I think she was like 12 years old. And I remember telling my wife, I said, hey, you want to adopt a 12-year-old? She doesn't even know where she's being taken to. She doesn't have any family in the United States.
Let me see your hands.
In this case, the driver admitted he accepted payment to drive down and smuggle a dozen people into the U.S. to be transported to locations all over the country.
15 seconds later.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, your tattoo's pretty thin.
And another unwanted tattoo is on its way out.
It's the first time we offer this program in Madera County and the city, so it's been a great turnout.
Great enough to see 30 people get their tattoos erased in just the first hour of the 4-hour event, says Madera County Probation Supervisor Maria Maciel, with more forming a line outside the Madera County Justice Center to do the same.
We're not only treating gang-related tattoos, we're also treating, mistakes that people made.
There's been an uptick in shark attacks in Florida making headlines, but a Florida Atlantic University professor says the number is actually on par for this time of year. And he says sharks are usually mistaking people for prey that they'd normally feed on.
If you're in the water splashing around and the water's maybe a little murky, a little harder for the sharks to distinguish whether you're a person or not, the palm of your hand or the sole of your foot catching the light could look like a little shiny fish. Similarly, if you're wearing things like watches, jewelry or something, you're wearing a watch, you could catch the light and look like a little shiny fish. And the sharks will come up and investigate, and they investigate with their mouths.
He says to swim near beaches with lifeguards, pay attention to beach flags, don't wear jewelry in the water, and avoid swimming alone. Coming up, popular kids' snacks highly contaminated with lead, what the manufacturers said when confronted with the data. It's a story Spotlight on America has exposed for years. Toxic, brain-damaging lead lurking in food for babies and for toddlers. We told you about contamination of purees detected all the way back in 2017. And now a new disturbing chapter involving snack food. Some of the worst contamination ever detected is now being revealed. Our Lisa Fletcher reports.
It's the go-to snack that kids love. And with labels like organic, rice-free, and no added sugar, one that parents trust. But some of these puffs, featuring one of the latest trend ingredients, cassava root, were found to contain alarming amounts of lead.
FDA needs and must do more.
Tom Neltner is the National Director of Unleaded Kids, a group that focuses on reducing lead exposure from all sources. The Consumer Reports test results on puffs came as a surprise to many.
What does that tell you?
That tells me we need to pay attention to all these other types of root crops that we didn't pay attention to.
Root crops like potatoes, carrots, and cassava require rigorous testing to make sure they're not absorbing heavy metals from the soil. Consumer Reports tested 2 brands of cassava root puffs, Lesser Evil and Serenity Kids. Both were found to contain lead. The highest levels were found in these Lesser Evil Lil Puffs Intergalactic Voyager Veggie Blend that contained more lead than any of the 80 baby foods Consumer Reports had tested since 2017.
What was interesting is that some of the cassava products didn't have it high levels and others did, which suggests there's opportunities to lower the level, and you really need to do quality control.
But if companies are missing the mark, the FDA is charged with ensuring a safe food supply. The agency was supposed to set limits on heavy metals in baby food years ago, but still hasn't done it, forcing parents to blindly trust what's in products they buy for their kids. Even if the FDA finally sets standards for contaminants in baby food, those closest to the issue tell us they're not expected to be rigorous and won't even include snacks that we now know can be among the most contaminated products.
For reasons I don't understand and they didn't explain, they eliminated all the snacks. Snacks like teething biscuits or these puffs. So those are among the highest levels of lead and often arsenic in them. So it was disturbing to us that they exempted those from the scope of their action levels.
It kind of leads one to believe that they're more interested in what's happening with industry than with the public health side.
So that's the way the agency has been operated since 1980. It's not new. We know the damage it causes to kids' brains. We know the lost lifetime earnings that the kids will have. So they don't do that analysis. Instead, they just look at the market and say, what can we do that won't disrupt the market? So that's not what common sense requires.
Lesser Evil released a statement saying it was dismayed by the news, but claims it tests its products and has confirmed they meet safety standards. Still, the company says it will phase out cassava flour. On its website, Serenity Kids wrote it vets suppliers to use the cleanest possible ingredients, and its puffs exceed all applicable health and safety standards. For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
All right, Lisa, thank you very much for that report. And coming up, the milestone that this amazing galactic image from NASA marks when we come back. Meet what NASA is calling the penguin and the egg. If you look closely, you can see the uncanny resemblance to exactly that. But this is, in fact, a pair of intertwining galaxies. The stunning new image from the James Webb Space Telescope that today, by the way, marks its second anniversary. The $10 billion telescope started taking images back in July of 2022. It is the most sophisticated infrared space telescope ever constructed. Just how good is it? Well, it can see details the size of a penny at the distance of about 24 miles away. Pretty impressive. Well, that does it for us on this Friday. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of the National Desk. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful week.